So hi, Ian Finley here. We're going to continue our discussion of playwriting today with an idea that goes back to that Aristotle guy that we've been talking about a fair amount that may be very useful to you as you're writing, especially if you're going to be writing a short play. This concept of his, which he called the Unities, are less useful if you're writing a full-length play, and in fact they are totally not useful if you're writing a movie or a screenplay. But if you're writing a play and it's a short play, they are a very powerful tool. So again, they come from Aristotle, but you're sick of seeing his name, and he called them the Unities. And there are three of them. There is unity of time, unity of place, and unity of action. Now, I'm going to explain what these things are, and then I know there's going to be some objections in your head, so we'll talk about the objections to them. But he said that an ideal play have unity of time, which means it takes place in real time. He actually said it should take place within 24 hours. But basically that means that what we see on stage is real time. The curtain doesn't come down and it's suddenly, 5 years earlier or 5 years later. That it's basically real time. He said unity of place, which means it takes place in one location. There's one setting, one set, and we're not going to other places. The curtain doesn't come down and suddenly it's down the street or in the next county or around the world. And unity of action, he said there should be one plot, no subplots. Now, I can hear you all screaming in the back of your mind, but wait a minute, what about this play that doesn't do that, and this play that doesn't do that, and this movie that totally doesn't do that? Well, here's the thing. We don't usually use Aristotle's unities very much anymore. Because primarily there was this guy named Shakespeare who came along, and apparently he never read Aristotle. So his plays all break these. They jump backward and forward in time, and they jump from location to location, and they have all kinds of subplots. And so we've seen, because of Shakespeare, that you can do a play that breaks all of these, and it really works. But here's the thing. The unities are still useful because they give incredible focus to a play. They give it an incredible energy. And the shorter the play is, the more important these become. This is because a very practical thing. Unlike a book where if you go from place to place, you're just turning a page and it says, and then they were someplace else. On stage, there's got to be a change of some sort. There's either a set change that has to happen, or even if there's not a set change, a character needs to explain where we are and when we are, if there's a jump in time or location. And that slows us down. Imagine if you were writing a 10-minute play, and you've got 5 different locations. And every time we go to a location, we've got to have a set change. If we've got 5 of those, and it's each 20 seconds, then that's a full minute just of set changes. And in a 10-minute play, that's 10% of your play that the audience is just sitting in the dark waiting for the next thing to happen. So anytime you break the unities, it slows the play down a little bit. Now, in a full-length play, that probably doesn't matter. You can afford to have it slowed down here and there. But in a very short play, like the ones that you may be writing, every time you break the unities, it slows it down. Now, keep in mind that this is very different from writing a film. If you're writing a film, you can jump from place to place and time to time instantly. That's the power of the cut in a film. So in a film, not only do the unities not hold, but it's almost the opposite. You can actually build momentum and build speed and build focus by jumping from place to place and time to time with lots of super fast cuts. But a play is different than a film. So if you're writing a film, ignore these. If you're writing a play, maybe you still want to ignore them. But they can be very powerful, and you ignore them at your peril, because every time you break them, you slow the play down. And the shorter your play is, the less it can afford to slow down. And if you hold to them, you give your play a kind of laser-like focus, because the audience is not allowed to ever look away, to ever focus on something else. There's a very famous play called Night Mother by Martian. And it is the most depressing play that has been ever written anywhere. And it's depressing because it holds to these unities. There's unity of time. It takes place in real time. And in fact, there are clocks all over the stage, so you can sort of see time ticking down. And it takes place in one location. It's a realistic living room. And there's one plot, just one plot. At the beginning of the play, there's a grown woman who lives with her elderly mother, and the daughter comes in and says, at 9 o'clock, I'm going to walk through that door and I'm going to kill myself. And the entire play is the elderly mother trying to convince this grown daughter not to do that. And it is harrowing. It is just the most difficult thing to watch because it holds these unities, because we're never allowed to leave that room and that argument. And we can see the clocks ticking down. We can see the time passing toward 9 o'clock where the daughter said, I'm going to go through that door and kill myself. And at the end, she does that. And it is just unbearably depressing. And it's a brilliant play. And it gets its power because we're never allowed to look away. We're never allowed to do a flashback or jump forward or leave that room. It's like we're locked in that room with these people locked in this one desperate conflict. So used properly, the unities can give a play a laser-like focus and an intensity. And the shorter the play is, the more valuable they become. So if you are writing a short play, as you may be doing, certainly if it's anything like less than 20 pages, if you're writing a 10-minute play, which is usually between 8 and 12 pages, then you really want to hold to these unities, which typically means you've got one scene. We don't have like multiple scenes and we're going from place to place and time to time. We have one scene in that play, which means that as you're brainstorming and you're thinking of how to outline your play, you want to think, what sort of story can I tell in real time, in one location, and with one plot? Because every time you break one of them, it's going to slow it down a little bit. So those are Aristotle's unities, which you might want to use.